Hello and welcome. We are back at the Metropolitan Culture Corner. It is already March of 2025. How did that happen? This past month, there's been all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the world, but one bright spot for me has been looking forward to this particular interview where we go behind the scenes with the owner and founder of Barcelona's Velvet Room, Yodé Olubajo. Born in London, raised in Lagos, Nigeria, he returned to the UK to finish school and attend university. Yodé also spent many years as a cabin service director for British Airways, which took him all over the world. He ended up living in Venice, where he was known for his cabaret performances and also for organizing an annual boat party that was an extravagant, spectacular, elegant, unmissable event that attracted attendees from all over the world. He speaks 4 languages: English, Yoruba, Italian, and Spanish, and he is known for his fun, flamboyant personality and style. 15 years ago, he moved to Barcelona, and it has been his home ever since. But throughout all these adventures, somewhere in the back of his mind, Yodé always had the dream of opening his own club, his own music venue, and this dream finally became a reality when jazz club and piano bar Velvet Room was born. The atmosphere is like stepping back in time to the 1940s and 50s when sophistication and glamour were the order of the day. Each detail is carefully curated, from the crystal glasses and the high-quality champagne and cava to the gleaming surfaces, the black and white photos of jazz greats on the walls. Entering this intimate, beautiful space takes you away to another world, especially when you hear the music that they program in the club, which sounds like it comes from a bygone era. But old school music and old school elegance notwithstanding, it's one of the newest and coolest additions to the Les Corts neighborhood and a unique spot on the Barcelona local live music scene. And here to tell us all about it is owner and founder of Velvet Room, Yodé Olubajo, on the Metropolitan Culture Corner. Welcome.
Thank you.
Starting at the beginning, when you were growing up in Lagos, if this is not too cliche of a question, what was your dream for the future? Did you see yourself traveling the world and performing and opening up a jazz club someday? Or
No, I mean, I was born in the UK, in London, in the mid-60s, shall we say. I'm an old man. But anyway, my first 5 years were in the UK, and then my parents whisked me off to Lagos. Lagos is the commercial capital of Nigeria, as you probably know. So I lived in Lagos with my family for 13 years. And then I came back when I was almost 18 in 1984. Then I did my A-levels, went to university, and I never thought at that time that I wanted to do anything like that. I've always wanted to be on stage. I've always wanted to be an actor, some kind of entertainer. That's always in my bones. I wanted to do something like that. But you have to understand, when you're from a culture like mine, and also the generation of my parents, so being a black African child telling your parents you want to be an actor or a singer or a dancer, you get a slap across the face, because the first thing they say is that's not going to pay your bills, and you're black, you're never going to make it, blah 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 blah, that you need to get a proper education, you have to go to university. And if you have Nigerian parents, they will actually tell you what you have to be. You have to be either a doctor or a lawyer or any of the what they consider to be safe jobs that will set you up for life. So I wouldn't say I was academic at all. I always wanted to study literature, go to drama school, and that's all I wanted to do. But I never could do it because my parents, it's just something that they would never have agreed to. So I went and did a business studies degree, which I can't say actually is helping me out with my business right now because it was so long ago. It's the people side and the entertainment side. That's my strength. All of the figures and the finances and running the business, I'm absolutely crap at it. It stresses me out to no end every single day. I'm overwhelmed by it because I don't have a business partner. I'm doing this all by myself. But anyway, I'm digressing. So I went to university, did that, and I realized I really wanted to work with people. So I went and studied social work, and I worked with mentally ill people. So we would say, I mean, now you have to be very careful with political correctness, but mainly schizophrenics were the people I worked with. We were the first generation that took them out of hospitals and tried to look after them in homes to make their lives a bit more normal.
But if you have a great talent with people, just from the little that I know of you, you do, that's still a huge leap between that and being able to deal with a person who is him or herself dealing with a really heavy burden. So how did you find yourself working with schizophrenic people as opposed to some other kind of face-to-face job that didn't involve quite so much really emotional investment?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of training, and you're not on your own as well. You have a lot of team support support. So we would work with psychiatric nurses, psychiatrists, you work with specific mental health practitioners as well. We all had our own 5 or 6 that we looked after. And so basically each one had a team, and I would meet with those teams and we would decide things like whether to change the medication, whether they need a higher dose or lower dose, or they're getting better now and maybe it's time to move them from the home that they're sharing with everybody else and give them their own flat and things like that. But it was called care in the community. It was something that came up in the 90s, and we were trying to take people away from being permanently locked up in psychiatric wards and stuff. So it was a very good thing to do. But of course, it was also quite dangerous as well in some ways, because we used to have a few mishaps. I mean, I got beaten up once by one of my clients, but luckily there wasn't too much damage done apart from a slightly damaged nose. You do it for the love of just trying to care for someone. But it did take its toll on me, and after a while I couldn't do it any longer. But I still wanted to work with people. So my thing turned to working for an airline. I suddenly had this thing that I wanted to work for an airline company.
Why was that something that drew you? Because you could see the world, or
Yeah, I see the world, and being a typical Sagittarian, we're totally all about travel and adventure. I think I wanted to work with people, meet the public, but I also wanted to travel. And I thought this was a perfect job for that. I also like the whole glamorous side of it because, I've always had this glamorous side. And in those days, it was a very glamorous job. So yeah, I said to apply to all the airlines, and then I got into British Airways. My goal was the big prize, British Airways. I had to work for British Airways. That was the best, the flag carrier of the United Kingdom, British Airways. And my life just changed immensely. I couldn't believe for the first 10, 15 years that I was being paid to do the job, because it was just such a glamorous job in those days. I mean, now it's a bus in the skies, airport experiences and air rage and this and that. It's awful now, but then it was really fabulous. It was very, very tough to get the job in those days. The airlines really did pick and choose their crew. We had to go through rigorous interview processes and a 6-week training course. But yeah, I was lucky. I got in and I rose through the ranks very quickly, and I got to the dizzy height of cabin service director. I did 26 years in total. 18 of those years I was a cabin service director, so it was amazing for me.
what is that exactly? If some people don't know.
It meant that I was basically in charge of the whole plane. I led the whole crew. I was in charge of the customer service, in charge of the safety of the aeroplane, in charge of the crew down route as well. So if we're on a 10-day trip, I was like mommy and daddy, rolled into one for the crew. They had any problems, issues, and trust me, crew have a lot of problems and issues. The longer the trips are, the more they comes out, and you have to deal with everything, while they're away. Their children might get ill, their father might die, something happens, then you've got to try and get them back home, liaising with the company and trying to get them on another flight home early, and then trying to get them to fly me spare crew out from standby to take their place, all sorts of things. I mean, it's a never-ending job, but I loved that responsibility. I'm a person that likes to care for people and help people and do things, so it was a perfect job for me. And also looking after our clients on board. I might be in first class talking to a CEO of a company that's bringing in billions, but then he's in the galley middle of the night crying and telling me his woes, his wife's about to leaving or this is happening. And you have to develop this empathy and listen, and it could be 4 in the morning and you're absolutely shattered on that 12, 13-hour flight to Singapore, but you've just got to keep your eyes open, focus and listen to that customer. It was an amazing job. We were rewarded very well, and of course, it was all 5-star hotels, and we got to see many cities around the world. But then the pandemic came. We were at home for 2 years, and I was on furlough pay. So the government was giving you 80% of your basic salary. So I was like home for 2 years earning all this money. Okay, it was 20% less than what I would normally earn, but you weren't spending any money. You weren't going anywhere. I was able to save more during the pandemic than I ever did when I was traveling around the world and buying more shoes that I didn't need. And God knows, yes.
My mother and my grandmother would approve, by the way. They'd be like, yeah,
Oh, bless you.
that's an investment. You were already in Barcelona when this happened then, because weren't you in Venice before?
Yes, I was in Venice. Yes, sorry. Yes, I jumped because I was talking about the airline career. What happened with Venice, rewinding, started my flying career while I was in London with BA. And then I met a guy on holiday in Mykonos in Greece. I used to go to Mykonos every year for 27 years. But anyway, one of the earlier years, I met this Italian guy and fell completely madly in love. And he must have felt the same way because it went beyond the holiday romance. We didn't even speak each other's language. Of course, now I speak Italian very well, but then I didn't speak any. He still doesn't speak any English till this day, bless him. And I would go over to visit him in Venice, and he would come over to visit me in London. But because I did long haul flights with BA only, it didn't really matter where I lived. I could commute. And of course, I had my concessions with the airline to just jump on the planes and travel. So I decided to make that leap. And he, he's an architect living in Venice, and it wouldn't have been easy for him, especially with no English, to move to the UK. BA had a language school in those days because they really wanted us to learn other languages. They were becoming more of a global airline, and they wanted us to have languages. And the Brits are terrible with other languages. And they even went abroad to recruit lots of people from different cities around Europe because they wanted people who spoke Italian, French, German, etc. So we could communicate better with our customers on board. So I took advantage of that, and I used to go on my days off to the language school to learn Italian. So by a year's time after I'd met Romeo, his name was, I'd learned enough Italian to give me a bit of confidence to move there. So we did split up after a few years, but I stayed there for 10 years. During that time, I used to come and visit friends in Barcelona, and I discovered how beautiful the city was, and the weather's obviously better, the sea, and it was a lot more cosmopolitan. I thought, yeah, it'd be a better move for me to be there. And also there were a lot more flights. BA was doing about 11 flights a day to London from Barcelona and back. So I thought my commute to work would be a lot easier than 3 flights a day I had from Venice to London. I had a big send-off party with my friends in Venice. By then I'd made some amazing friends and I moved in. But while I was in Venice, just rewinding, I did fulfill a little bit of my passion to be on stage and act and stuff. I started hosting boat parties in Venice. So I would hire a huge boat once a year, just once a year, and friends from around the world would fly in, plus my Italian friends, and we would sail across Venice at night. It was fully catered and everything, and I would do drag on the boat. So I did drag every year. So I used to enjoy going off to Thailand, to Bangkok, to get all my costumes made. So I would request those trips very often, and I would get them, and I would go, and they were 9-day trips, so it gave me plenty of time. Basically, we'd land in Bangkok, we'd have 2 nights there, then we'll have to go to Sydney, and then we'd come back a few days later, and a few more nights in Bangkok. So as soon as we landed, I would literally run to the shops, no matter how tired I was, and they would measure me up and start making my new design for my next boat shows. And then we'll go off to Sydney, come back, and I'll do another fitting, and then it'll be ready just before we go to the airport the next day. It was very tight many times trying to
So you
get
totally made this British Airlines situation work for you in every way
Oh,
possible.
totally. So that was Venice, and moved here in 2010, carried on flying. Pandemic came, at home for 2 years, and then they called me back after the pandemic. I had to reapply for my job because they got rid of so many people. And they said, well, those of you who didn't leave, you're going to have to reapply. Those of us in the managerial positions, that was. And I luckily kept my job, but I knew they were also paying people to leave as well because they wanted to get cheaper people in. And people like me on old contract were paying us quite a good salary. They wanted us gone anyway. And I already had this during 2 years. I said, I think it's time that I fulfill this dream, because what had happened was throughout the years, traveling to lovely cities like Chicago, going to Paris, going to bars and jazz bars and places. And also when I was in Mykonos, there was a lovely bar there called Montparnasse I used to go to all the time. And I was singing there sometimes as well. And I just had this bug, and I always thought one day I want to own my own bar. And so when the pandemic came and I had these 2 years at home and no jet lag, my body clock was finally set and I stopped being this hamster on a cartwheel, my feet firmly on the ground. I had a lot of time to think, and I thought maybe it's time to revisit this. Also because I was getting older, I was coming up to 55 at the time, and I thought it's time to do something with this. Otherwise, I don't want to have regrets of not having fulfilled my dream. And so I plucked the courage. I told them I wasn't coming back. They paid me off, and that was it. I started investigating, looking for a venue. I had no idea what it entailed. I just knew I had to do it. I first tried to get help from the Ayuntamiento, and there's like a place in Glorious near me where they try and help new startups and businesses, but I didn't really get any help from them, to be honest. I thought they were quite useless. And I ended up having to hire someone to find me a bar. It's funny, I already had it in my head how I wanted the bar to look like, and I wanted something from the 40s and 50s. I wanted that glamour from that period. I basically set the bar up like that, and the rest is history. Here we are today. It will be 3 years in May. It's the hardest thing I've I've ever done in my entire life.
People often say, someday I'll retire, I'll open a bar, I'll open a cafe, and everyone always says, "Oh my God, this is harder than my entire professional career put
Oh,
together."
totally.
You mentioned this ambiance that you had always wanted to create, like the 1940s kind of nostalgic, elegant atmosphere. Why was that something that you really were drawn to? And also, why do you think people are drawn to it? Why people respond to it?
Because I think people are also nostalgic, not just, the 40s and 50s, but in general, they're nostalgic about the good old days when we were a bit more elegant and decadent and sophisticated. I mean, if you look around you now, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but when I walk the streets, I see people dressing like just very lazy. Nobody wants to dress up anymore. It's like what I was saying about flying. When I first started the job, people used to dress up to come on the plane. They'd have their lovely hats. Some of the women had white gloves, and people look great coming on board the aeroplane. Now they're going with slippers and tracksuit bottoms. They even bring a pillow on their armpits, and they look like they're going to a slumber party or something. And I've always been someone who likes sophisticated, glamorous. I like to dress up. I like champagne. I love the finer things in life. Always been drawn to that. I mean, there are millions of bars in Barcelona, but when you go into 80, 90% of them, I'm always so disappointed. It's just so cheap looking and bright lights. And I just always wanted the crystal glasses, the beautiful dim lights, the wallpaper on the wall, the old antique chandeliers and lightings and stuff like this. Because of my budget, I had to do it as best as I could. If I had more money, I would do so much more. I really would.
Do you think that's part of the secret to quality when it comes to interacting with people, when it comes to all these details that you've invested in your place? Is it has to do with your standards never quite reaching where you wish you could be?
That's part of it. But I think also with service particularly, it's not something you can teach someone. You either have it or you don't, which is why I struggle with it with my bar staff often. I mean, I always encourage and praise them because people are human and sensitive. But I have to be honest, they never ever up to my standards, because I think when somebody leaves their house and goes somewhere to spend money and spend time, they want to be pampered. Why would you go to my bar and spend 25, 30 euros for a bottle of wine when you can buy it for 4 euros and sit at home and watch Netflix or something? People go out for an experience. They want to leave their troubles behind. They might not say it to you, but it's implied. I think it's implied. When someone walks into Velvet Room, often we get couples or friends. They're coming in to be pampered. They want you to make them feel special and feel amazing. And when they come in, it gives me so much joy to be able to go there and light that candle as soon as they sit down and interact with them and talk with them, find out where they're from, this kind of stuff. And when they're leaving, depending on the body language, 80% of the time I hug. You have to be careful with that because obviously you could be invading someone's space, but I'm very good at reading people. I just go with the flow. But the overwhelming majority love that hug. I don't know if you've seen our reviews.
That's what I was going to mention, because most of the online reviews talk specifically about how exceptionally well they were treated by the staff, but by you specifically, and they say how impressed they were that you come over, that you welcome people, that you spend time with them. I mean, so much so that if you don't mind me giving you a shout out, that you guys were just named in the top 10% of the best experiences worldwide by TripAdvisor's Traveler's Choice Awards, which is pretty cool. I mean, your presence, your personality is such an important part of the place from what it seems like.
I think it stems from three parts of me. There's the Nigerian side of me that's very warm and bubbly and flamboyant. There's also the Sagittarian type that comes with that as well. And then there's just me. I just love people. I've always loved people, and I love dogs as well. Dogs and people, I love them. When I look in someone's eyes and I've done something nice and the way they respond, it just gives me more fuel to do more. I live off that. I live off the fact that I have made somebody's day better, whether it's by an hour or two, because I know everybody's going through difficult times. No matter what face someone puts on, life is tough. Life is very, very tough. And it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, black or white or whatever, everybody's going through challenges. We're living in a very, very difficult world and in very difficult times. And if I could just put a smile on their face or make them feel special for a few minutes or an hour or whatever, it makes me sleep better at night. So I really enjoy looking after people, and I'm trying very hard to get my staff to emulate that, because I'm not always going to be there. I'm there all the time now because I'm still building the business and I'm trying to get to the stage where financially I'm able to detach myself from the actual day-to-day work of the bar. Because at the moment when you go there, I'm doing everything. I'm the waiter. I'm the one that's been hosting it. What I would like to do more is host it full time. People come in and I just spend my time interacting with them rather than running around up and down. And I only get a few minutes with them at the beginning and sometimes in the middle and then at the end. I would like to get to the stage where the business is financially able for me to hire just that extra one person or two even, so that I can really focus on not just doing that, but also driving my business, go to events where I can promote my business. I've just joined, it's supposed to be an all-female group, but they took me on as an honorary member, the Glam Brunch. It's a group of fabulous women, all successful entrepreneurs, and they do glam brunches. So they all dress up, and I love dressing up. I actually paid to have a 2-page spread in one of their magazines. And then on the last one they've just done, they decided to put me on the cover.
I think people, men, women, even though this is a women's organization, I think people respect entrepreneurs when they come across somebody who's obviously put their soul into what they're doing, you know? It was interesting what you were talking about because I know all too well that when you're in a business that requires you to do all this facturas and all this accounting, you got to order things, you got to do all this stuff that has nothing to do with the original reason why you got into it. That can be extremely boring. It can be frustrating. It can be overwhelming. But I think it's really cool to hear you speak and you still have this passion for the heart of what you do. If someone was listening to this and they said, you know, I want to do that too, whether it's opening a jazz club or whether it's doing something else, how do you maintain the passion for the part that you love, even though you've got to do all this other stuff?
The way you maintain the passion is you have to keep your focus on the reason why you started it. So even when you're having challenging times, which you're going to have every single day, you have to take moments of that day to keep reminding yourself why you've done it. So for example, for me, I'm running around, I might have had a really stressful day, like you said, doing bills, ordering stock or dealing with some incompetent supplier or whatever it is. And then I get to the bar and then people start arriving, then the entertainment starts and you can see how animated everybody is. And then I stand back and I look at what I've created and I see how much joy I'm giving to everybody. And then you've also got to remember that as you get more and more successful and you're able to start delegating more and more of those things that are getting in the way of your actual drive, which is to really entertain people, it will get easier. That's when you can really come into your own. And that's worth waiting for, because that's when you're going to be able to really enjoy and maybe even start to be more creative with your business. Keep that focus and you have to remind yourself why you wanted to do it in the first place.
Speaking of making things more difficult but also more beautiful, you chose to have live music in Velvet Room. Your heart was a performer's heart from day one, and from what it sounds like, was that the motivation to include live music, or was there another reason?
No, I've always wanted to have live music. And I also realized that in Barcelona particularly, it's needed because yes, there are a handful of musical bars, but there aren't that many, especially jazz, blues, swing bars. There aren't that many at all. There's only a handful of them. And in the 80s they had a lot of them, but it died down over the years. But it's making a resurgence now. People are beginning to wanting to go out and listen to live music. But I think, part of the dream was always to have a stage and live music. Absolutely. What I see Velvet in the next 5-10 years is that I have more than one, that I have maybe 2 or 3. I don't know if it'll all be in Barcelona or maybe I'll have one in another city in another part of the world. I would like to certainly do one in the center, and I would like to have like a cabaret bar because gay men they love cabarets. What would be nice is to have a bar that has separate sala or something. So in one section you've got the live entertainment going on, but then there's a room somewhere else that's been hired for another event, a multifunction place at the same time. I hope so.
Well, this has been so great to talk to you. Fun to hear your story and to hear somebody so excited and passionate about what he does. Really, it was great to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. It was really, really lovely talking to you as well.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Yodé. If you haven't had time to check out Velvet Room yet, I highly recommend it. They host a jazz jam session on Sunday nights, as well as all kinds of other events. Check out their website, and when and if you're in Barcelona, stop by, enjoy, relax, and see what all the fuss is about, because not many places live up to their reputation. This one absolutely does and surpasses it. See you next month on the Barcelona Metropolitan Culture Corner, and thank you very much for tuning in once a month to support local art and culture. It's more important these days than ever.